So, good morning po, Dr. Lasco. Thank you po for being our interviewee for today. And today, we would like to interview about faith healers po, specifically the ones in Quiapo Church or the ones that talk about faith healing using the name of God or related to God po. So, our first question is, what are the common misconceptions about Filipino rituals? Ay, hala. Sorry po, Doc. Mali po yung tanong. What are your areas of specialization po?
Well, I'm a medical anthropologist, so my specialization is trying to understand, trying to make sense of the different connections between culture and medicine. So it's a very broad field, and it involves understanding where people are coming from in terms of their health practices, their values, at the same time particular topics like tuberculosis, HIV, drug use, and many other health conditions.
So for having knowledge on both fields of anthropology and medicine, could you say that science, fortune telling, and faith healing coexist?
Well, they've always coexisted.
Yes.
If you look at our society, you see people trying to navigate between different kinds of domains, whether it's science, religion. So in a hospital, you will see chapels. In a ward, in a hospital room, you will see a cross hanging on top of the beds.
Yes.
So it's always coexisted. The challenge, I think, is how to understand that coexistence and make people, how can we make that coexistence work for people and help them make choices.
So could you say that they actually both exist as facts? Like, for example, we believe that science uses medicine, while faith uses non-abstract mediums like prayers and such. Could they actually coexist both as facts?
Well, in anthropology, we're not interested in trying to, kasi your question comes from a positivist perspective,
Yes.
which means that you want to prove something, whether it works or not. But in reality, kasi nga, all of this coexist. So even facts and your supposed facts and beliefs, there's a spectrum. You cannot draw the line between that. So even medicine, halimbawa, when was the last time you took an antibiotic or any kind of drug?
It would be, I guess, whenever I have been prescribed with physical illnesses that
Okay.
could be easily cured.
So can you think of any medicine na nainom mo na? Halimbawa, amoxicillin. Can you give me a random?
It would be, I guess, I would say the easiest one would be ointments.
Ointments,
Since
okay.
I have skin diseases.
Okay.
It would be antifungal disease.
So mga well, yes. So whatever conditions you have,
Yes.
whatever you take, whether it's a pill or an ointment, it takes some faith as well. Hindi mo naman tinest yung amoxicillin mo eh. You didn't test those, but you somehow you believe so even facts. If we're going to be strict speaking about facts, supposedly measurable. Pero sino nag-measure? Hindi naman ikaw. So even facts as such require an element of faith.
Yeah.
On the other hand, even supposedly parang mythical things or faith-based things also have an experiential quality. So even yung mga faith healing, people experience it as a very physical reality. So what I'm more interested in is not so much facts, but experiences, ways of being and knowing.
So now that we have differentiated and compared basically each other, why are there people who experience the holistic healing in spiritual ways but do not experience healing in a medical way?
Well, again, also, what do you mean when you say in a medical way?
The example is the ones who have, say, grave diseases like cancer or like HIV, who believe that they have no hope, medically speaking, as they were diagnosed such as that. But when they approach faith healers, there is a sense of relief to them.
Okay,
or a
sige.
healing.
So, there are two responses to your question. First of all, I think we cannot really make a distinction between medical or physical conditions and spiritual. Kasi cancer is also, I would argue that cancer is a psychosocial experience. The thought of of dying is as much part of cancer as the symptoms, the physical symptoms, like losing hair for chemotherapy, etc. So we cannot really distinguish. However, I see value in your question in terms of your concern about why people go to faith healing.
Yes.
And I think the problem with our biomedical treatments, whether it's for cancer or any other condition, is they tend to focus on trying to treat the symptoms without dealing with and acknowledging the biopsychosocial reality of illness. On the other hand, the faith healers, they're very good in tapping into these resources, the spiritual. So it appeals to people. Kasi when you go to a doctor, you don't just go to a doctor to get a prescription. You're also there to listen to the doctor's interpretation of what's happening to your body. You're there to find comfort, and you're there to find words of encouragement from the healer. So
From reassurance.
reassurance. At the same time, some meaning. Kasi life is all about meaning and purpose.
Yes.
So these faith healers, by mobilizing spirituality, are able to provide, pwede nilang sabihin na don't worry about this condition, because ultimately what matters is your family. Ultimately what matters is your life, your relationship with God. So by being able to frame whatever condition the body is experiencing into these broader realities, in a way, faith healers have this advantage that they're able to address those concerns in a more, like you said, holistic way.
So now that we've also answered that question, what could be an underlying reason that people tend to seek help from traditional practitioners rather than medical professionals?
There are many reasons that they can overlap. For example, first is a disappointment from doc. Maybe they have a negative experience na ang haba ng pila. So it can be as simple as, ano ba yan, ang haba ng pila. It can be a pragmatic concern. For example, ang mahal.
Yeah.
Yung kamag-anak ko, last time, nagpuputingin kami doon. Inabot kami ng millions yung nagasta nila. So, there can be some financial concerns. There can be skepticism about maybe they've heard some of these conspiracy theories about how yung mga cancer, pinaparahan lang tayo ng mga yan. They invent cancer. So, it can be different reasons. And I think all of them are important to understand. Yeah. So,
Okay po. So the next question is, what are the factors that might contribute to the increasing population of people who believe in the accuracy of these practices?
which practices?
The practices of faith healing.
Well, again, yun nga, if it's held against, kasi if you go by anecdotes, it's a question of epistemology, or
Where they come from.
yeah, so epistemological issues are issues that concern questions of fact. How do you know what you know? How do you validate the truth? And doctors, or the biomedical institutions, their epistemology is scientific inquiry, so experimentation, randomized controlled trials, etc. However, it's a very difficult epistemology to communicate to people for whom a more compelling epistemology would be experiential knowledge.
From the spiritual.
Not just from the spiritual, but also from their own experiences. So halimbawa, kahit nasabihin mo na statistically breast cancer, if you're given chemotherapy, 95 to 99% stage 1. If it's stage 1 breast cancer, the survival rate, 10-year survival is so high. Parang normal survival. 90 to more than 90. Even stage 2 breast cancer is now, as long as ma-diagnose ka agad at that stage, 90% survival for 10 years. But there will be, if there's 90% survival, there will be someone who will die. And what if yun yung kamag-anak mo? What will be your impression of chemotherapy? It doesn't work.
So they still see the 10% after.
Because that's the 100% for them.
Yes.
So if you look at a meta-analytic level, nakikita mo millions or thousands. But if you're an individual person, makikita mo lang kamag-anak mo. And what if that person belongs to the 1%? Then you will form a very negative impression of medicine. And that's why they would tend to believe. And if that can be now magnified through other channels, for example, social media. So what if yung namatayan na yon ng stage 1 breast cancer shared her story, or yung family niya, parang itong kamag-anak namin namatay dahil sa doktor na yan. What if na-blame yung doktor? That will spread. If that goes viral, then that can influence the people more.
So it's like, for you, you could say that it is more of an personal experience.
Personal experiences.
Yes.
Well, lahat naman tayo eh.
Yes.
We tend to... Have you heard of someone say, "Hay nako, hindi na ako sasakay dyan sa Air Asia na yan. Palaging late." But what if that person, nakasakay siya ng plane thrice? Yun na yung kanyang
Experience.
But there are thousands of flights every day. Thousands of flights ng airlines. That airline alone, probably hundreds of flights every day. But you will not use that as your measurement. You will use your personal experience. So, biomedical practitioners and public health officials should recognize the experiential primacy of people, para hindi lang, akala kasi ng mga ibang doktor, bakit pa natin kailangan explain yan sa mga tao? Ito na yung publication natin. We've studied thousands of people. Bahala sila. No, we have to communicate. Kasi ang kalaban ngayon, the competition is social media, experiential anecdotes, viral videos. So, kailangan maging mas effective ang mga doktor to communicate their treatments. Otherwise, like you said, mawawalan sila ng appeal, and there will be popular alternatives that are also questionable, can be questioned. Pero yun pa rin yung papaniwalaan ng mga tao kasi may mga testimonial support sila.
So now that we hold like biomedical doctors to a standard where, say, if they fail, they are viralized, they are basically ostracized because they would be believed as bad people or incompetent people. How about to the side of the faith healers, doctor? Could the practitioners be considered as fraud if their procedures don't work? In, say, if they were a faith healer and their patient still dies, would they still be considered as fraud?
Well, of course, they will be, but the problem is they don't have the
Liability.
They're not licensed to
Yes.
begin with, so
It's not medical malpractice in the first.
well, technically it is,
Yes.
pero they're not even under the jurisdiction of medical practice. So how can you malpractice if you don't have a practice? Parang ganon. So it's a very gray area. Kaya ang nangyayari, at the same time, think about it. If you're someone who offers a cancer treatment, and then halimbawa, this leaf, I can declare, look, this leaf is a cancer treatment, and then may naniwala. So if I manage to convince you na this is a cancer treatment, and then you give it to your relative, what if your relative dies? Now, the question is, ang priority mo ba magreklamo pa sa your loved one just died. So people are dead. They can't complain because they're dead. At the same time, iba na yung priority ng mga tao. Siyempre, they're grieving, they're mourning. And how can you attribute the death to the leaf? Malay mo, pwede mo sabihin, well, talaga namang we tried our best, or hindi talaga siya nag-work. Parang medicine kasi has this expectation eh. The biomedical profession is perceived as the gold standard, and therefore it's held to a higher standard. Yung mga faith healing, parang baka sakali lang. I'm sure many of these families are also skeptical, pero they're also hopeful. So pag nanaig yung hope, they would pursue those treatments. Sometimes they're also too embarrassed to admit na, kasi baka sabihin, bakit kayo nagpatingin doon sa quack doctor na yon? Ngayon, nagrereklamo kayo, hindi nyo ba, so kayo pala yung may gawa, kaya yung relative nyo, kaya nagkaganyan.
So it could be also said po na parang it's because since they approach faith healers first, they're also afraid to approach biomedical doctors. Since yun nga po, parang they were already under parang prescription of a faith healer, and so as soon as they die, parang
Well, one possibility that I see from my own experiences is that many of these patients are also parang they're told by their mga faith, yung iba, not all. Some of the faith healers think na okay lang yung ano. Some of the faith healers think na okay lang, batiin kayo sa doktor. There's no conflict. But others say, no, okay dyan. So, in a way, there's an antagonistic relationship that happens because some of these alternative healers say na, nako, they're poisoning your body, all of these chemotherapy. So, syempre, nagkakaroon ng antagonism. And then, wala na rin tiwala yung mga ibang pasyente sa biomedical institution.
So should they be actually held accountable for those?
Yes, I think so. I think so. In fact, the problem is they become quite powerful, yung ibang mga alternative healers, and they can actually threaten some of the doctors as well. So I have experiences of a colleague na ginawan siya ng fake blog na kunyari yung pasyente accusing him of sexual harassment kasi he called out this alternative healer na poisonous yung mga herbs mo. They're not real herbs, they're poisons. A lot of people are suffering. So he was vilified in social media because of this alternative practitioner.
So for the next question, why does the church still not eradicate the presence of these practitioners in area despite the contrary of belief? So like the one as we were saying, we are focusing on the faith healers outside of these churches who say they are actually using the name of God, saying they will heal them through prayer or through traditions related to Christianity. How do you think the church still not does something about this issue?
Well, they have very little motivation to do that kasi they might alienate their own flock na kasi even though siyempre mga church leaders, they cannot really regulate the beliefs of their flock. But I agree na they have a role to play. So one possibility is to work with them. So baka dapat magkaroon ng dialogue in terms of kasi actually I think yung mga faith healers are not really the main issue from a biomedical perspective. Kasi they're mostly offering mga prayers and such. Ang mas nakakatakot ay yung mga nag-o-offer ng mga alternative treatments. Because some of them are reported in ER, yung mga emergency rooms as harming the body. These are poisonous. So sila yung kailangan ma-regulate. Pero I think prayer and mga faith healing, it can even be beneficial for patients na meron silang spiritual support and hope. I don't see that as necessarily mutually exclusive na yung mga ganon at the same time yung mga chemotherapy.
And I would just also like to ask Doctor, how about as a medical expert, how do you see the popular faith healers in TV, like say Kiboloy or some famous televangelist people?
Of course, they like I said, they feel a need among people for giving them a sense of purpose, a sense of belief. Pero the challenge is to educate. So for me, instead of opposing people's beliefs, I think doctors need to be more effective in communicating their own knowledge in ways that is more accessible. And these people are very charismatic. They appeal so much. They're very compelling, entertaining as well. So how without vilifying anyone, diba? Without making enemies of people, how do we promote our own treatments as something that's beneficial? It's a matter of education and communications.
So for the next question is, there have been also reports of abuse from the police in terms of money, where police takes money from the people to involve letting them work there. So basically the question is saying there's corruption behind these faith healers. Could it be said that the rights of the practitioners are being abused even if they have, say, no proper legal access and, say, medical background? Should they still be protected?
I think you're referring dito sa mga nagtitinda ng mga sa Quiapo, yung mga
rosary,
yung mga
prayers.
At the same time, yung mga herbs.
Yes po.
So that has to be addressed. But that's more of a political issue rather than something. So I think that can be resolved through people's cooperation and yung mga stakeholders. For example, the mayor might have to do, maybe the doctors in Manila can lobby with the mayor and they can have a dialogue. Pero yun nga, iba kasi dito. It's hard to draw the line kasi between practices that are harmful. Kasi vitamin, in the same way, many of our vitamins don't work. They don't have any value at all. They're not needed. But people buy them. But do you say, pagbawalan yung mga vitamins kasi hindi naman yan kailangan. It's hard to legislate or to be heavy-handed with people's health, because in reality, it's not really the doctor that's doing the work, but it's the people themselves. They seek their own health care. So it's hard to regulate at that level. But if there's corruption going on, then that can easily be addressed, not as a medical issue, but as a political issue, as a legal matter.
So, for the next question is, can science either prove or reject the accuracy of these practices?
It can try, and it has tried, but that again, magkaiba kasi sila ng domain eh. It's a different epistemology, so it will be very difficult for science to effectively do that. There will always be a role of religion. The challenge is not one will win over the other, but how they can coexist and how we can achieve the best for patients, drawing from the best of both domains. So what science offers is this empirical evidence for treatments. What religious and alternative practice offer is yung more on the communication skills, the empathy, the appeal to people. So both of them, all of these things have a role for patients. So the challenge is how to maximize them in ways that don't harm. Kasi nga, kami as doctors, we're trained, first do no harm. Yun yung pinaka-motto ng medicine. So, if it's a harmful product, then don't do it. Don't allow it.
So, for the last question is there a differences of practicing in faith healing in terms of the customer's belief system? So, basically what the question means is that when consulting a faith healer or compared to consulting a biomedical expert, is there a difference to the approach?
Yes, makikita na in general, especially in settings na very very busy. So normally there's short, especially in the public system. Kasi our public hospitals. So when we talk about medicine, we have to be particular about it kasi there's private hospitals, there's public hospitals, and many of these public hospitals, the doctors are overworked and underpaid, so they have very little time to give to the patients. They're stressed, and alam nila na wala naman sila masyado kikitain from them. So there's all of these factors, and then the patients, by the time they reach the doctor, haba na ng pila. So both parties in the interaction are stressed out, and so it's not the ideal. On the other hand, if you have a faith healer or even in Quiapo, yung mga vendors doon, they have all the time. So, they can get to talk more, and then mas understandable yung kanilang explanation ng pagkakasakit. So, in terms of style and in terms of the context, magkaiba. And syempre, with the doctors, there's fear, baka mapagasta ako. And that can also affect your experience of something. Diba, there's anxiety na hindi mo alam kung magkano yung magagasta mo. Have you ever experienced ordering food in a restaurant? Tapos, parang hindi ka sure kung magkano yung pagkain. So there's some anxiety to it. So these are things that can be addressed by reforming the healthcare system, make it affordable, train doctors to be more effective communicators. There are steps that can be taken para minimize yung ganito mga factors.
So that has been all our questions for this interview. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.